Hello, everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. I can remember when my twin baby boys were about a month old, and I asked our pediatrician when they would begin to sleep through the night. She threw her head back laughing as she walked out of the examining room and said, "See you next time." As it happened, the boys started sleeping through the night about 2 weeks later. Except I didn't know then that through the night is actually more like 5 or 6 hours at that stage. But I tell you what, at that point, I was like, I'll take it. It doesn't work that way in some homes, though. Many parents really struggle with getting their children to sleep. And that's why I'm so pleased to have today's guest with me, Hilliary Giglio. Hilliary is passionate about helping exhausted and frustrated parents who have likely tried everything in their quest to teach their children to sleep through the night so they can too. She has a successful coaching business working with expecting parents up through parents of school-age children across the United States and 3 continents. So, man, this is a universal challenge. Hilliary is a master at teaching you how to get your child to sleep independently, sleeping through the night, and taking restful daytime naps. I know that's welcome to many parents. When she is not coaching or public speaking, she can be found fantasizing about a future when her own sons listen to her as enthusiastically as her clients. And I can tell you it's coming, Hilliary, I promise. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
So listen, I know you have a background in psychology and social work. So why don't you tell us how you became an expert on getting little ones to sleep?
Absolutely. So when I had my first child, I have 2 boys now. When I had the first one, brought him home, did not want to sleep anywhere, but right here, in a recliner with him propped up. Every time I would try to lay him in that darn bassinet, he would either wake up, he would start crying, he was not having it. I was convinced he didn't like the bed. You should have seen the amount of sleeping spaces I purchased trying to find the right bed for him, right? Fast forward a few months, I am crazy sleep deprived. I had returned to work, wasn't functioning as good of a mom as I wanted to be, wasn't functioning at work, in my relationships. It was a disaster. My own mom actually had told me about sleep consultants, sleep coaches. I had never heard of them. I'll be honest, first time mom, I kind of had this ego. I was like, moms have been getting their babies to sleep for thousands of years. I'm no different, thanks mom, whatever. Little bit farther down our journey, I took my son to a mama baby yoga class. Turns out the instructor of that yoga class was also a sleep consultant. We chatted a little bit. She gave me her card. I still was like, okay, put it in my wallet, kind of pretended to forget about it. At about 6.5-ish, 7 months of my son's age, I was like, fine, I'm giving this woman a call. And fast forward, I ended up deciding to work with her. She literally changed my life in 3 days. I was blown away at what my son could do. I was blown away that it wasn't nearly as hard or scary as I thought it was going to be. And on that 3rd night, he went from being a kid who was sleeping next to me, waking up, nursing just long enough to go back to sleep every 45 to 60 minutes all night long, to sleeping in his crib for 11 hours straight, getting up at 7:30 every morning. I was already trying to find a way to do my previous jobs more freelance on my own. I hated being in my office full time. And then this experience happened, and it's kind of just like the stars aligned. And I was like, this is it. Became certified and founded my business almost 5 years ago. So.
Wow. And it's just so important to understand, why babies cry, why they struggle with going to sleep. And so let's talk about that.
Yeah. So crying is an extremely popular topic in my line of work. And I talk to moms every day I'm in my office. And most of the moms that I talk to, one of their first, sometimes only question is, okay, you can get my baby to sleep. Are they going to cry? Do you teach cry it out? Right. So, first and foremost, I always find we kind of have to clear up what cry it out means, because being in this line of work as long as I have learned there's about 1 million different definitions of what that means.
Mm-hmm.
So, formally in the sleep world, cry it out is actually known as extinction method. What that means is you place your baby in their crib. You're like, see you in the morning, buddy. You close the door. You don't respond to their cries, and you come back in the morning. It assumes that crying is what teaches a baby to sleep. And number one, that isn't true. Number two, I am the mom of 2 kids, would never feel comfortable doing that with mine or ask any of my clients to do that with theirs. However, we have to go a little bit deeper. Humans of all ages, you and I included, are extremely habitual when it comes to sleep. So all of us adults out there, think about, you probably sleep on the same side of the bed each night. You probably use a particular pillow. Perhaps you like to lay in a certain position when you're actually getting into sleep. Like whatever it is, we all kind of have these strategies, these habits. And if I came into your home and said, hey, go to bed at a new time, in a new way, new pillow, whatever, you'd probably be like, oh, I don't think so, lady, or worse. So parents should expect a similar level of protest and resistance when we change their child's sleeping habits. And if we can think about it in this way, it actually makes a lot of sense and is honestly kind of fair, right? And the only way babies in particular have to resist or protest anything, not just sleep, is through crying, right? It's just the form of communication. So I cannot do this work with 0 tears. If it was humanly possible, I'd be doing it. I'd be a millionaire. Not the case, but I take crying very seriously. And so the things that I do and things parents can think about are, first and foremost, let's make sure your baby's needs are met. Because yes, babies cry from unmet needs, but they cry for a whole lot of other reasons, right? So health, safety, hunger, attention, attachment, meet their needs throughout the day. Secondly, it's really important that you get all of the contributing factors just right for your baby before you even begin any work on teaching independent sleep skills. If the schedule isn't quite right for their age or their developmental stage, if the environment isn't conducive to good sleep, if their routine steps aren't optimized to help promote an easy journey to sleep, all of these things, if you don't get them right for your kid, can lead to extra unneeded crying. We don't want any extra, right? So we get all that just right, set them up for success. And then it's important to have a plan. Like, have a plan. Whether you work with someone like me or not, put a plan in place. What are the strategies we want to use to support your child as they're making that journey from awake to asleep, learning how to do it independently? Everything that I do with families allows them to maintain their active involvement. So you get coached on ways, what to do, what to say, where to be, when to do it very specifically, so that you can support your child, reassure them, and empower them while not sabotaging your progress towards sleep. And when families do all of those things correctly, the crying is much shorter lived than they expect it to be. And it gets better really fast because the crying is a symptom of confusion. We just changed everything on them, of tiredness, but not yet knowing how to put themselves to sleep. And the more times they do that, they literally rewire their brains. Just like learning any new hard skill, it gets easier. And then there's no more reason to resist or protest.
Wow. And you make it sound so simple and
I do it every day.
Oh, wow. So yeah, I thank you very much for addressing the cry it out method, because I definitely hear a lot of parents, talking about that. And so I like also what you've talked about in terms of setting the stage for babies to get the proper amount of rest and to do it, to begin to do it themselves,
Right.
Yes. So, let's talk about what happens, when they are sleeping and why it just really is so important because I've definitely seen some parents with small children and they don't even think they need a bedtime. It's just like
Hmm.
they're just hanging out with us and when
Hmm.
we go to sleep, the baby should go to sleep. So talk
Right.
about that a little bit about how important it is for the child to go to sleep. You did talk about kind of routine and them knowing what to expect. But talk a bit about that. How
Yeah,
important.
yes. So yes, sleep, I mean, one of my mottos is sleep is health, right? It is a necessity, not a luxury, and an important component to anybody's lifestyle, including babies, including children, and they need more of it than we do. Um, and it does reduce over time, but it's minimal, right? So a newborn really needs 16 to 20 hours of sleep. I mean, they're sleeping all darn day, right? Pretty much. Um, I read these statistics somewhere that talk about, or these facts, so to speak. So I learned people are actually hiring sleep consultants for adults, like for professional athletes to help them perform better in their sport, right? I've also read about some cutting edge employers who have learned the importance of daytime sleep and how providing opportunities in the workplace can actually improve the productivity of an employee. Yes, that's adults. But if sleep is that important for adults, just imagine how important it is for babies and children. I mean, they're literally growing and creating their brains here, right? So I'm very research based. My background in psychology and social work takes me that way. And I've done research over the years very specifically about the benefits of sleep for children. So I actually brought them with me here today. If I tried to memorize them all, I would screw it up. But I think it's really telling and really motivating for parents to know, like, literally what this can do. So, getting healthy sleep helps to increase and maintain brain connections and pathways. The most crucial period for this growth is during your child's first 3 years of life. It has been found that children who don't sleep well tend to have lower IQs than children who do. Children who sleep longer retain more knowledge than those who sleep less. Children who sleep less than 11 hours per night score lower on all kinds of school tests, including math and literacy.
Mm.
Children who consistently sleep fewer than 10 hours a night before the age of 3 are 3 times more likely to have hyperactivity and impulsivity problems by age 6. Babies who don't sleep well at night consistently perform worse on tests designed to assess memory, emotional control, and organization. There is a relationship between poor quality sleep and deficient levels of growth hormones, which are critical for your child's development. Those are released during deep sleep.
Mm.
Poor sleep throughout life, which can start during childhood, has been linked to higher rates of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease, including that children who get less than 10 and a half hours of sleep per night are significantly more likely to be obese. Now, none of this is to scare you based on
Right.
where you are. This is no shame, no judgment, but really to understand on a scientific level how important it is for the brain and the body, especially for a growing child. And at the end of the day, science aside, I'm sure that all of the parents listening to this can agree that lack of sleep leads to grumpy people. Am I right?
Right, right.
We'll be right back after this.
You love your kids. You do your very best for them. But sometimes it feels like it's just not enough. And you're so sure you're the only one who feels this way. The truth is, you're not alone. It is also true that there are some things you're doing quite right. And there's a community who would love to exchange ideas with you. I'm Carol Maletta, creator of the Parenting 411, a portal for parents where I share information parents need through webinars and masterclasses. And not only that, the parents there support each other on this amazing journey in the Parenting 411 community group on Facebook. I can't wait to meet you in the community.
And we're back with the Parenting 411.
I appreciate you talking about, I wanted you to talk about the benefits because very much we just take it for granted. Well, it's nighttime, we should go to sleep. I mean, like, it's just what we do
Right.
or
Right.
whatever, but it is so valuable. And I've never really had a problem sleeping. Like I said, I'm a champion sleeper, but
Awesome.
I will say that during those early months with my twins and the feedings at night, and of course they decided they didn't want to be fed at exactly the same time.
Right.
One child had acid reflux, so
Mm-hmm.
they needed to be fed individually. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was getting, instead of say 2 hours or 3 hours between, it was more like 1.5,
Mm.
and so that was the first time I realized what it felt like to be sleep deprived. And I remember even like hallucinating, like when
Oh.
the second child was crying, like after I'd already fed one and I'm going back to sleep, and then I hear the second one, I'm like, oh, I already fed him. And then,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then, of course the crying persists. And then I'd be like, oh no, wait, no, I didn't. I have to
Mm-hmm.
get up and
Mm-hmm.
do that. So I really saw the effects of not having enough sleep. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you're talking about it. And so I wonder, I know that's not your specialty, adult sleep coaching, but are there some things that parents can do? I mean, it may even be just the fact of what they're doing for their children that gets them settled, that then, can help them go to sleep, or just
Mm-hmm.
maybe some tips that do benefit parents directly in terms of
Yes.
getting plenty of sleep.
Yes, I love that question, and love that you value that as well, because I think sometimes parents, moms especially, it's kind of like this unspoken, it shouldn't be there, don't know where it comes from, but just kind of this assumption that it's part of being a mom, right? It's almost like a badge of honor. We don't want to wear. And it is not selfish to want sleep, and all of us will be better humans in all capacities of our life. So it is fair for mamas and dads to want their sleep too. A few tips I have are, I talk a lot about the physical sleep environment for the kids and the families I work with, but it's really important for adults as well. So a super dark room is best for all human sleep. Now I know those people that can sleep in a lighter room, but it really does make a huge difference. I'm like like hotel room dark, as dark as you can make it. Um, Screens, this day and age, I know we're all on them all the time. And oftentimes, after we get those kids to bed, is the time of day where we might be getting on our computer to work, vegging out on Netflix, scrolling mindlessly from our bed, right? The blue light they emit actually inhibits our body's natural melatonin production.
Mhm.
So, when possible, to arrange your day so that that last hour before you go to sleep is screen free, you can actually have better melatonin production, which is our sleepy hormone. It's going to help us fall asleep. It's going to help us regulate our sleep patterns. Related to that is devices in the bed. And I'll be honest, I don't always follow this one. It's a hard one, but it's actually been shown that if your bed is primarily, for sleep, that you're going to have an association with it that is stronger for sleep. So we're not watching TV in our bed. We're not using our phones. We're not eating in our bed, whatever it is, really keeping that bed for sleep.
Mhm.
Now, with parenting, I tend to find the baby monitors
Mm.
can cause some problems. Now, I am pro baby monitor. I think they are wonderful. They are great for safety, for reassurance. But the high end of the volume they allow those things to go really isn't the volume you need when there's no noise in your room and you're sleeping.
Mhm.
So be mindful of it. A lot of times as parents, we're a little bit anxious. Of course, we want to know if our baby needs us, but you're going to hear them if they're crying, if they're actually awake. So if you find that you're the volume 10 right next to your pillow kind of person, experiment with turning it down to 60%, even start at 80%. You can take baby steps here. Put it on a dresser that's a few feet from your bed. It doesn't mean you're not going to hear your baby if you really need to, but it might mean that you sleep through some of their restless sleep. Babies are noisy sleepers, even when they're not
Yes.
fully awake.
Yes.
They can really just become something that we are, any little trigger of sound on them. Last two things I think are really important are if you have a partner in your home, to communicate and to come up with a system to kind of share the responsibilities around sleep. I always encourage people to have both parents in a 2-parent home to be as involved as possible. Now that looks different if one parent works night and one works days, one stays at home, one works outside of the home. I'm not saying that's 50-50. I'm saying as involved as possible. And you figure out how to share those. So maybe you switch off every other night. Maybe you split the night in half. Maybe you switch off every other waking, whatever works for you. But talk about it, have a plan, because I talk to a lot of people with resentment towards their partner because one person's taking the brunt of it. And when we can have those clear expectations with our partner during our sleep time, we're able to get more sleep. And the very last thing is I love to talk about, everybody always tells us as new moms, sleep when the baby sleeps, right?
Yes.
And while, yes, that is all great, except for if your baby doesn't sleep or sleep well, or if the only way you can get them to nap is by walking around with them in a baby carrier, pushing them in the stroller, or driving them in a car. That's obviously not going to get you a lot of sleep. So if you've tried all the things that you can think of and you still find that you can't sleep when the baby sleeps because you're having to do something, it's a good sign that it might be time to look into some stuff to help get your baby to be that confident, independent sleeper so that you can sleep when your baby sleeps.
There are a few things that came to mind as you were speaking, like the whole thing about having a completely dark room. I am sensitive to lights and things like that. And so the way our bedroom is situated, my husband's and mine, I have a direct line of sight. It's several feet away, but the thermostat, those little lights, the red light, the blue light for air conditioning, the red light, and so I actually went on Amazon. I don't know what my search was, but it brought up these strips of black stickies, and they had them in different shapes to accommodate all kinds of devices, little circles and whatever. I actually bought those and covered those up. I mean, my husband does not get it. He is like, why? I can't believe this makes that much difference for you. And then over on the other side, near where we come into the room, there is the security system panel. And then when you set that, it takes a little while. I mean, it's set, but in terms of the panel going out, it's quite a few minutes before that goes out. So I have masks too, because he might want to read. Might want to read either with a nightlight or with a Kindle, a reading device that still emits light. Like, I am sensitive about that. I really do like to have it dark. And then something else that you talked about, well, actually you didn't talk about, and I want to talk about, and this is about sleeping, bringing the baby to sleep in your bed. That was just something that I just decided I wasn't going to start. I'd heard, I have an older brother and sister. They had children, way before me, and and just other people that had children. And I was like, that's something I guess I'm just not going to start. I'm not going to start that. And so we really didn't have that challenge. But what are your thoughts?
Good question. Yes. So I know families that do it. I know families that never have done it. Families like me who did it out of necessity and desperation for a short period of time. So here's the deal. I mean, as a sleep professional, I have to tell you that the American Academy of Pediatrics does not recommend co-sleeping, having a baby in an adult bed for safety reasons, that they should be on a firm, flat, safety-approved mattress, right? And families who are doing that safely, not the AAP, but there are guidelines if you look online that will help parents come up with safe approaches to, safer approaches to bed sharing. So I always tell families, I don't have a shame or judgment on any choice you make around sleep. I do want it to be safe, but otherwise you do you if it's working for you and your baby. For most adults, bed sharing isn't working for them. Maybe it's helping with their baby a little bit, but they're not getting the sleep they need. Also, however, it usually tends to stop working for babies. So even if it works when they're itty bitty teeny tiny, that usually starts to backfire, where it's not actually helpful. They're getting more mobile. They're waking up and mom's right there, so they want to play rather than just peacefully going back to sleep. Toddlers are diagonal in between you and your partner in bed. One parent is kicked to the couch. I mean, this is the stuff I talk to parents about every day. Somebody's been on the couch for 6 months because child's in bed. And so it's not, yes, for most adults, it is not helpful for their sleep. Mm-hmm. And for most babies, it either isn't or becomes where it's not helpful. Mm. I have worked with families with 5-year-old children who have never slept a night in anything other than mom and dad's bed. Mm. So if sharing your bed with your child for 5 years straight seems like something that works for you physically, mentally, and emotionally, and everybody's sleeping, but there is ways, no matter the age of the child, to teach them to be confident in their own bed. And whether they're in your room or their own room, having their own bed is going to improve everybody's sleep.
Mm-hmm. And I have to say, too, from our experience where you talked about establishing the bed as the place for rest, we felt that way about the room. Like our sons, I mean, they're now young adults, but they never had a TV in the room. Mm-hmm. They had, and so when they were even younger, it was only a few books. Mm-hmm. They had most of their books in another room, but a few books and, stuffed animals and things like that. But that we really wanted their whole room to be mm-hmm. a place of rest. And we had music in there. We played music during bath mm-hmm. time and all of that. And also when they were younger, we let them listen to stories on, CDs and things mm-hmm. like that. And I also did, and this wasn't so much because they weren't bad sleepers, but this was more just, we took our first trip when they were 2 years old. We went away for 4 days. And okay. So I read nursery rhymes I recorded myself reading stories. Mm-hmm. And so I had that playing for them. And again, it's not so much about sleep, but just missing us. But that could also mm-hmm. be soothing and comforting for children too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you bring up a lot of good things there. It's definitely important to look at the room. And of mm-hmm. course, when they're in cribs, it's a little different than when they are in the big kid bed in terms of what toys might be in the room. If you're confined to your crib, it's a little bit different story. When I work with toddlers and bigger kids not in cribs anymore, sometimes we have to have that conversation about, do we need to kind of strip the room of some of those things? And for some people, for some kids, it's not a problem. For others, it is. And they really need a kind of boring room to be able to sleep well and not be distracted and tempted. Mm-hmm. But yes, having those cues, those are all kind of cues you're talking about. So whether it's a cue that your room is for sleep, cue that mommy and daddy are still loving you, even when they're far, anytime we can have these familiar cues, it's really going to help your child. They are going to remember those things and they will mm-hmm. literally trigger, being able to calm down.
Mm-hmm. We'll be right back after this.
As the saying goes, mother's work is never done, except when it really is. I'm talking about my new book, Mother's Work, Pearls of Wisdom and Gems from My Journey. I share my transformation from an outmanned, overwhelmed mom of twin boys to a parenting strategist and consultant, and being honored as DC Mother of the Year by American Mothers Incorporated. In Mother's Work, I tell you about the 7 guideposts that kept me anchored as I weathered the peaks and valleys of motherhood. Grab your copy at carolmaletta.com/motherswork.
And we're back with the Parenting 411.
You've given us so many good ideas. Any other things that come up that you want to talk about in terms of getting children to sleep?
Yes, yes. So I learned kind of the hard way. um, some of the things, there are things that we do as parents that we don't even think about or that seem logical, right?
Yes.
That are actually kind of hindering our child's ability to be able to sleep well. Um, bedtime is one of those things where some people, kind of like you mentioned earlier, some people have them, some people don't. Some people have them, but they're not at an appropriate time. Um, an early bedtime is best. So even if you're not following a super rigid schedule, for most kids out of the first 10 to 12 weeks of life, somewhere between 6 and 8 p.m. is usually in sync with their circadian rhythm. Um, so if your baby's in, your kiddo's in bed 9:30, 10 o'clock every night, you might want to try backing that up. I've worked with families who wanted or needed kind of unconventional schedules because of their work lives. And sometimes we can do that. We always try. But otherwise, that's going to be kind of what is kind of in sync with their natural circadian rhythm. Also, kind of on the environment, putting them to sleep in the same place every night. Now, often this does come naturally with age as we start getting babies in their beds, kids get older. But especially in those early days, it's normal. Well, they'll fall asleep on the little lounger thing. They'll fall asleep on our bed. We'll try to put them in their bassinet. Might be in the car, the stroller. And some of that is completely normal and expected in the newborn stage because they sleep all the time. But the more you can start practicing putting your child in the same place every night, especially, but then start to try building in that daytime sleep as well, so that they know every time I go to this particular place, it is for sleep, right? Mm-hmm. The expectation is there. Bedtime routine is super important. You can start them early on. If not as a newborn, it's going to be really simple for a newborn. Usually I say around 3 or 4 months of age is a good time. And so a lot of us hear about bedtime routines. It's kind of one of those things you hear about as a new parent. But there are some things we can do or not do in them that can make a huge difference, right? So number one, you'll always want the steps to happen in the exact same order every night. We want your child to predict what comes next so that their brain knows at the end of this routine, I'm going to be placed in that bed and expected to sleep. We also want to make sure that there's kind of this spectrum of excitement, right? So we don't want anything that's going to have them fall asleep in the routine. Now that's a big one that we tend to do as parents. Mm-hmm. The routine ends with them asleep in our arms, and then we very quietly lay them in there and try to sneak out like a ninja. We also don't want it wildly overstimulating. And so a lot of times I'll see parents, they do their bath, they get their jammies on, and then they kind of have some on the floor playtime, or with toddlers, more kind of rough and tumble play before we go stick them in their bed. Move that before the routine even starts. Get that energy out. That's not kind of making our journey to sleep. It's throwing a wrench in things. If your child's young enough, your baby's young enough that they're having a bottle or a breastfeed in their bedtime routine, putting that closer to the beginning of the routine is more beneficial for sleep. It's a big change. A lot of us will feed at the very end of a routine. Mm-hmm. And with newborns, we still are, but that starts to cause other problems in sleep. Which kind of leads into the next thing of there's getting that routine right for sleep, and then putting your child in bed awake. Normal and natural for us to help our itty bitty newborns get to sleep. And there's always going to be a time in those early days where we have to. And at the end of the day, sleep is better than no sleep. Mm-hmm. However, children who use something external, they fall asleep feeding, being rocked, being held, bounced on the yoga ball, driven around in the car. I mean, list goes on and on. We go put them in that bed. Several things can happen. Number one, they wake up when you put them in that bed because they notice the change in environment. And then we're back to doing it for another hour. Number two, they stay asleep. But when they wake up in the night, it's going to be a much more escalated waking. They're not going to know where they are. If you went to sleep in your cozy bed every night and you woke up on your front lawn in the middle of the night, you'd be alarmed. Fight or flight response would kick in, and you would be looking for some help to get back to where you came from, right?
That's interesting.
So when your baby falls asleep in your arms, you put them down there, they wake up at 2 a.m. and they're like, I'm in this bed by myself. Last thing I remember is all being cozied up in mom's arms. It's going to be much harder for them to get back.
It makes so much sense.
It's yes. And it can be a hard thing to change, but it's totally possible. When we can support them from making that journey from fully awake to fully asleep. They go in the crib awake, they put themselves to sleep. When they can learn to kind of master that part, it's going to allow them to more seamlessly and effortlessly connect sleep cycles in the night. If they have a naturally occurring wake up, it's going to help them be more confident sleepers during the day, so they can consolidate those as well. So the end of the day, getting into where they don't need your help. You do this routine that cues them. You put them in their bed. They're calm. You walk out the door, and they calmly, peacefully, confidently go to sleep. Really is possible. It seems impossible for so many of us at some points in this. And then if they wake in the night, practice pausing. So this is another thing we don't tend to do out of the gate as parents. It's like hardwired in us. Like we hear a baby wake up, they cry, we're there, right? We're there with the pacifier, we're there with the bottle, whatever it is. I mentioned already that babies are noisy sleepers. They spend 50% of every sleep cycle in REM sleep. That's where we dream. It's a lighter stage of sleep. As adults, our bodies go into muscular paralysis during REM sleep, so we don't act out our dreams. That doesn't develop in young babies. So when you see that restless, squirmy, noisy newborn sleep, that is their REM sleep. There are times when parents start practicing this, they realize either their baby didn't fully wake up or they were able to go back to sleep on their own. If we just pause for a moment, observe what happens. If they ramp it up to full-blown crying quite quickly, we're going to go respond to that. But giving them a little bit of space, magic can start to happen. And then as you kind of build comfort with that, you can give a little bit more space so that your baby has a chance. Number one, we give them the physical and emotional space to even do it. And we make sure that we're not going in there and fully waking them when they might have just been kind of moving around in that REM sleep. So those are some of the foundations. You get all that right for your specific child, but those really are the foundations of getting your child to sleep well on their own.
Wow. I mean, this all just makes so much sense. My goodness. Yeah, I mean, you've given a lot of great advice right here, I tell you. Where can people learn more about what you do and how they could potentially work with you?
Absolutely. So my company is called Tranquil Beginnings. You can find my webpage online at www.tranquil-beginnings.com. I'm also on social media. So on Facebook and Instagram, the handle is at tranquil.beginnings.sleep. And there's loads of tips coming out, in bite-sized chunks there. Go on there. You can search through things. You can message me through either of those platforms. My other contact information is on my website. And also, if you visit the website, I like parents to know that I offer complimentary calls with anybody who wants to learn more. We're going to hop on Zoom for 20 to 30 minutes. We're going to talk about specifically what's going on with your child's sleep and your goals. I will share with you how I work with families like yours in private coaching. I'll answer any and all questions you have. It's completely free. It is no pressure, and there is no obligation to book a service with me, but it's a good way to talk face to face. There's so many nuances to sleep, right? So you can find out how to schedule a call on the website as well. Join the email community if that's your thing to receive blog tips. So lots of ways to get all kinds of sleep information.
Yeah, I want to ask you before we go, what's the oldest child? What oldest age have you worked with in terms of children, school-age children?
Yeah, 10 years old. And that's about kind of where my business really focuses. I always say when puberty kind of starts kicking in and hormones are starting to affect things, even though they're not an adult, they're probably more suited for an adult specialist type of thing. So yeah, everything from expecting parents, learning how to lay the foundation for healthy sleep from the start, avoiding some of the pitfalls that parents hire me for later, all the way to about 9, 10, 11 years old.
And I'm just curious because again, I didn't experience this with my children, but I'm just wondering for children that are older like that, do you tend to have children that they never slept well? Or is it that maybe it's traumatic, they're afraid of things or something like that? What do you normally find?
Yeah, it does vary. Probably varies a little bit more widely at that age. So I do have older kids who have never been good sleepers.
Okay.
We're just finally taking care of it. I have kiddos who were good sleepers, but then yes, something happens. And so maybe it's with a little bit younger, 3 to 5, even 6 years old, a lot of fears get developed and stay. Of course, a big one's fear of the dark, but fear of being alone, all sorts of things. There's an increase in anxiety and depression among young people, and especially with social media. And so sometimes some of whatever's going on in their peer life can impact sleep, just like for us, right? We're going through something hard, it can impact our sleep. And then how do parents handle that? Does it help the sleep problem or accidentally, hinder it farther, where we now have some other sleep habits on top of that? So it really, really does vary. Some kids are simply not getting enough sleep. There's a big problem, in my opinion, at least in this country that I know about when school starts for certain age groups, when extracurricular activities are offered. And so when we have a high school that starts at 7 a.m., circadian rhythm changes in those teen years. Later to bed, later to rise is naturally what suits their body. But we force them to be at school at 7 a.m. And I know there's a whole bunch of things in society that need that. However, then we're not getting to bed early enough because their body's not ready for it. And or football practice goes till 9:30 at night. Got to be up for swim team at 6 a.m. And so the things that we have in their lives are not conducive to get them the sleep that they need. And so sometimes it's a combination of figuring out how to make up for that sleep, how to schedule those things in a way that even if you got to have a night like that and an early morning, like how can we be strategic about that so that over the course of a week, over the course of a month, we're getting enough sleep. Right. If you miss out on sleep, this is all ages, you and I included. Sleep debt is the idea of if you're the kind of person who needs 8 hours of sleep at night, that's how you thrive. Tonight you stay up late for something, you miss 2 hours. You go to bed 2 hours later. Tomorrow night, you stay up working because you went out last night and you miss another 2 hours. That next day, you start the day with 4 hours of sleep debt. It accumulates, and it's that accumulation of missed out sleep that causes all the negative effects, mental, physical, emotional health to start happening. So it's really important to try to balance it when you do have days that you miss out on sleep.
Well, I hope all of our listeners really are going to try some of the tips you've already shared. I also hope they're going to follow you and to learn more about what you do and reach out if they see that their baby or, school age child is having trouble sleeping, that it really is worth it to see how you can help them because of the benefits you talked about at the very beginning of the episode. I mean, just how beneficial it is for our bodies, our minds, and our overall well-being to get proper rest. So thank you so much, Hilliary, for joining me today. Everyone, I hope that you will share this episode, like and subscribe to the podcast, and follow me at Parenting 411 on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And remember, it is never too late to be the parent you want to be.